Resources Commission. I'm Joy Coleman, the chair of the commission, and I'm going to call this meeting to order. Ellie, would you like to give some Zoom instructions?
Yeah. Good evening and welcome to the May 16th Historic Resources Commission meeting. My name is Ellie Mullins and with me is Lynn Braddock-Zollner, the Historic Resources Administrator. Together we will work alongside the chair to facilitate the meeting proceedings. Before we begin, I have just a few reminders to share. Tonight's meeting is being recorded and broadcast on the city's YouTube channel and cable channel 25. For those of you who are attending the meeting virtually, please remember to mute yourself when you are not actively speaking to help minimize distractions. When the chair calls for public comment on an item, anyone attending in person may approach the podium to speak. If you are attending the meeting virtually and would like to provide public comment on an item, please use the raise hand function to be called upon. We also ask that everyone state their name before they speak to ensure that everyone is able to follow along. And now I will turn the meeting back over to the chair.
Thank you. Now we'll have the roll call. Commissioner Haynes.
Commissioner Haynes here.
Commissioner Johnson.
Commissioner Johnson here.
Commissioner Klein.
Commissioner Klein, present.
Commissioner Hawley.
Commissioner Hawley, present.
And Chair Coleman is present, and Commissioner Meyer is absent. All right, let's get started with communications. Have we received any communications from other commissioners, State Historic Preservation Office, or the general public?
We did receive one communication that was added to your packet for public hearing item number 2, the landmark nomination.
Thank you. Yes, I saw that. Item A2 and 3, do any commissioners have disclosures of ex parte communications or declarations of abstentions to make?
I had communications with the organization about the Dowdell and Rice markers.
Thank you.
Commissioner Klein, could you let us know what that conversation entailed so that other commissioners have
It was
that?
basically talking about tonight's agenda and you know, what the differences were, and I couldn't see any differences.
Okay.
The differences.
From the last time that we talked about it in April.
Got it. Thank you. And then A4, any committee reports? ARC. Yes, we met. The ARC met, was that 2 weeks ago?
Yep.
Yes.
And I believe one of the updated projects is in the packet and the other one is not.
That's correct. The updated project is 916 Tennessee Street. The drawings that are published in the packet were the ones that were approved by the ARC and staff. And then the project for number 5 that was deferred for 1013 Connecticut Street, we did get those drawings and they're under review currently.
Very good.
That should be on your June agenda.
Perfect. Moving on to the consent agenda.
Sorry, Joy. The Brick Streets and Sidewalks Subcommittee held its latest meeting today. I wasn't able to attend, so tomorrow I'm meeting separately with C.C. Riley of the city staff for an update. Very important update for you.
Thank you, Will. Okay, moving on to consent agenda. Are there any comments on the items reviewed by the staff, or can I have a motion?
I would move approval of the design review applications according to the standards and information listed in the staff report for each application.
And I will second. Following the lead from last month's meeting, I am going to do the vote a little differently and just, how'd you put it? You said all in favor.
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
Can we do that?
We have one member that's on Zoom.
Okay.
So not everyone is present
so
in the
we can't
room,
do it.
so you'll need to do a roll call vote.
Okay,
Ruined it for everyone. I'm sorry.
thanks. All right, then Commissioner Haynes, you're first.
I'm sorry, could you repeat the motion?
The motion was to approve the consent agenda items.
Commissioner Haynes, aye.
Commissioner Johnson.
Commissioner Johnson, aye.
Commissioner Klein.
Commissioner Klein, aye.
Commissioner Hawley.
Commissioner Hawley, aye.
And Chair Coleman is an aye, so the motion passes. Moving on to item C, public comment. Is there any public comment for items that are not on this month's agenda? If there are, we can hear those now. We see no additional public comments, so we're moving on to item D1 of the public hearing items.
Good evening, Commissioners. Lynn Braddock-Zollner, Historic Resources Administrator for the city. At your meeting last month, we had rather large agenda, and when we got to the historic markers item, the commission asked that we defer that to this month to allow for additional time for the commissioners to read all the correspondence and comments that they had received prior to the meeting, and also to consider the information in the packet. So we are bringing this back to you this evening. Just briefly go through, we did do a little bit of the presentation last month, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that, so we can open it up for public comment and get some commissioner discussion. This is a proposal for two markers, one for Nick Rice and one for Tiger Dowdell, both commemorating their death at a location close proximity to where they were killed. The process started back in May of 2020 with a request from Christopher Rice, who was Nick's brother, for the city to place some type of marker to commemorate his death. In August of 2020, the City Commission had a meeting and referred the request to the Historic Resources Commission. And as part of that request, they set up a working group for people to work on the location of the marker, the context of the marker, and any other items that might be necessary to make this project move forward. And so the group met and had some recommendations for the Historic Resources Commission. One was the type of marker. There were several different types of markers discussed, and overall the committee felt that this Park Service type marker was the best option because it would be visible from the street. You wouldn't pass by it like you would. One of the discussion of the other markers were the plain, if you think about cemetery footstone type markers that are just flush with the ground and are usually of some type of granite or stone. So they did look at that, but felt like having the marker that was upright and above grade would be important to get people to stop by and actually see the marker and read the marker. This is a graphic of this might change a little bit when we have to go through design with the fabricator, but right now this is the proposal for Tiger Dowdell's marker. It has a photograph of Tiger on it and then very brief verbiage or text to be placed on the marker, with the idea being that it has a QR code and the reader could scan the QR code that would take you to a website hosted by the Watkins Museum of History that would have more information about the subject, the event, and also everything that was going on in Lawrence that summer of 1970. This is the text that the committee settled on. Staff had proposed text that did not include was killed by Lawrence Police. The staff text was killed near here. I know you received some comments in your communications, and then last month, public comment about that item, so just wanted to point that out. This is the proposed location for the Dowdell marker here in the public right-of-way. This is the old Salvation Army building right here, and then that's the alley where the chase, for lack of a better word, started. This is the proposed marker for Nick Rice. Same information in the text, hopefully directing people to scan that QR code and go to the Watkins webpage, where there will be hopefully a lot of information there. One of the items that had been brought up by the Watkins Museum was that hopefully maybe even on, and staff has been starting to look for money to help with this, but maybe being able to have some interviews on that website with some of the policemen that are still here that actually were involved in the events, some of the family members of both Dowdell and Rice, and how it impacted their lives. So hopefully it will be a very robust website so that people can scan that QR code and go there. And it's really difficult to put a lot of text to get context for events such as these that are so, it just requires a lot more in-depth viewing to try to understand what was taking place at the time. This would be the location of the Rice marker. This is Oread Avenue, and then the parking garage is over here. Nick actually fell closer down toward the university, but we wanted to try to keep it on city property so the city can maintain the sign. And this is a very luscious kind of garden area. I don't know if you've been up to this part of Oread Avenue, but some very nice landscaping, and then the tree is here, and so it was hopeful that that would make a nice kind of memorial spot for our marker. So you had a lot of comment to go through and things to read, and I know there was conversation about what exactly the next step for the Historic Resources Commission should be. So you have several things that you can do. You can approve the markers as they're proposed right now in your packet by that working group, the marker working group for the Rice and Dowdell markers. You can approve the markers with the text that staff had proposed, removing killed by Lawrence Police. You can return the markers to the working group to consider larger markers with more additional text. Or you can defer action on the actual markers until the website that hosts the QR code is designed. That was one of the comments from your public hearing last month. It would be hard to approve markers forwarding you to a website that you don't know what that website says yet. So that was something that staff went ahead and included in your possible commission actions. And with that, I'd be happy to stand for any questions you might have.
The question of whether the submittal is the same this month as it was last month is in fact true, because there wasn't the time between the two to revise.
That's correct. And there really wasn't direction from the Historic Resources Commission on what changes the commission would like to see if it went back and had additional text. So this is the exact same proposal that was before you last month.
Lynn, I do have a question about both action 1 and 3.
Okay.
As an approving body, does it necessarily, say there's a, let me clarify. As an approving body, do we get final, are we asking for final say where, for example, and this is just for example, we had comment along the lines of 3, return the markers for the working group to consider a larger marker with additional text. If, and that's a big if, you know, there was a majority of opinion of there's not enough text, we think a little larger marker and a couple additional sentences would be meaningful and beneficial, send back to the working group. As a process, if the working group liked that or worked with that, does it flow back through the HRC and it takes another review month? Does it flow from that to the city commission if they say that's a really bad idea?
No, it would.
What would happen?
It would come back to the Historic Resources Commission, so we could have that public input on what that final design would be, so the HRC could consider that before they make a recommendation to the City Commission. And I will tell you, where the working group ended up was not their first preference. They wanted more information on the marker. So I think they would be pleased to go back and look at perhaps a larger marker with more text. And I think staff had pushed for a smaller marker because of the context of the areas and looking at, especially for tigers in a residential area, having a smaller marker. But I think they would, be amenable to working on it some more.
Okay. This is a little different than a project review, so is there an applicant statement now, or?
No, it would just be ready for public comment.
Okay, then I think we're ready for public comment.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is KT Walsh, and thank you for your service. Also, thank you for tabling this so you could reflect on it and think about it for a month. I would urge you to make the markers bigger to honor these two young men who were both shot in the back of the head by the cops. We talked about leaving out the part that says scan the QR code, because I think in our culture now, people know if they see a QR code, they know. So you could take those words out and put in other words that have to do with the history. Also, Watkins Museum has a lot of materials, but so does the KU Spencer Library. And I wonder if KU would want to kick in a little money and also have their library listed on the marker. Housekeeping. Again, like I said last month, I would ask you to please put the actual names of the people on the marker committee in the minutes in the agendas, not just where they work, so we know who's working on this. Thank you. Please keep the text killed by the Lawrence Police. I think it's critical that people know that. Let's see, and the last thing I have to say is Commissioner Haynes is going to write the narrative, and I assume that's part of his job at Watkins. It's not something he has to do on his own time. I don't know. But he of course, didn't have time to write it in a month. We kind of would like to know how much time he needs, and can we support him by talking to his boss, Steve Nowak, to give him the time to do this work so the family won't have to wait any longer. Thank you.
My name is Kerry Alton-Byrne, and I spoke at the last meeting. I was one of them that strongly urged that it be sent back to make the marker larger. The current proposal is about the size of your laptop screens there, if you can imagine how small that really is outside. These markers, in my opinion, are at least as important as the lynching marker outside the building here and the other one for Margaret Vinegar. And they should not be that big, but they should be big enough to have a significant amount of explanatory text on them. To give those two young men whose lives were cut short over 50 years ago the respect that they deserve for their stories. It is extremely important that it be known that the police did the shootings. There's still a lot of controversy, I know, over why and how and what the reasons were. And that can all be discussed in the QR code. But I also think it's important that at least the basic information that's going to be available through that QR code is known at the time the markers are approved, because if they're changed afterwards, that changes the focus of the markers somewhat, and perhaps a lot. So I would urge the commission to send it back to the committee with the instructions to make it bigger, at least as big as some of the other typical markers are in here, like at the Grover Barn and other places, if not bigger, to get a lot more text on it, because this story goes right to the soul of Lawrence. It is a similar occurrence that happened with the lynchings. It is that important to the city of Lawrence, and it should be treated with the proper respect, and that such an two important stories deserve. So thank you.
Is there any comment from our online participants?
I'm not seeing any public comment online.
So I agree with what's been said, both by the questions that Jay asked for clarification, as well as statements by KT and Carrie. So I don't know if we need more discussion. Well, I can make a motion and then we can discuss if that works.
I'd like to discuss a couple
Discuss
more
first?
items.
Sure, go ahead.
In particular, I also have a follow-up question that I didn't think, I'd written it down, but I didn't ask you, and I can't read my own handwriting. On one of the items regarding seeing the content of the website in advance of any approval, and I will just say, like, you can guess from my questions, I think the markers are appropriate. I would like to see more explanatory text. But in particular, I agree with Kate, and I agree with KT's comment. You see the QR code, you know what to do. But for the idea of this commission approving a website text, is there any precedent either with this commission or other commissions for such? I guess I'm asking because we could approve website text that's submitted to us on day one, but unlike a marker, the website is theoretically changeable. Have any other commissions set really savvy precedent of how to handle the possibility of changing hypertext and revisionist history in the future?
I am not aware of any other commission that's approved text language for an item that is outside of the city's control. It's not to say that it doesn't exist. It may, but I'm not aware of that. I think the idea was to have you look at the text to go with the marker, and then probably at that time make a recommendation to the city commission. Do they want the HRC to get a yearly update from the Watkins about the text, or only if the website, or only if the website is changed, or just some kind of touch point? Ultimately, it would be the Watkins website, and they would have the ability to change the information on that webpage. But having worked with the Watkins for the past 20 years, I feel very comfortable with them having that type of power.
Mm-hmm.
That was my question.
That was a good question. I also had the same question. Because I didn't, in my knowledge or memory, I didn't think that the HRC would approve or review website text. But I didn't know. Well, I'm also in favor of the marker and believe that more context may be appropriate, and that we do not need to say scan the QR code, because when there is a QR code, we all are now trained to know what that is, and having the logos of Watkins on the plaque, and if the KU libraries also participate, that's going to be explanatory of where they're going to go, what they're going to see. So that makes sense. Is there a larger format typical marker from the Park Service or other guiding agencies?
I think where staff would start with the working group may be with the size of markers that are at Grover Barn, or maybe just a little, I'd have to check and see what the company has available for size. But I know the company that we got this size from is the company that did, that fabricated the interpretive panels at Grover Barn. So that would probably, they're not small. I mean, they're significant in size to be in a neighborhood. So we can pull all the sizes out from different companies and see which one. It's really probably going to be just looking at those different sizes and trying to evaluate how much text would go on each size, and kind of
Yeah, the
go
one
back and forth to make sure.
that's tugging at my memory is about 24 by 36, and maybe it has 2 posts instead of
Yes.
1 post.
Yeah, 2
Yes.
posts.
Yeah, but it's still on that kind of angled, not completely horizontal or vertical.
There is one that is smaller than that. I think the one that you approved for the digester marker is a little bit smaller than that. It's on 1 pedestal, but it's much larger than this. It hasn't been installed yet because there's construction over on the site where it's to be installed. So it's living happily at Parks and Rec right now, but hopefully when the construction is over, we'll be able to
Okay.
get that installed. So
Chair Coleman, zooming in on the product data, if this is the 12 by 18, going from the parts numbers, I strongly suspect there's an 18 by 24, 24 by 30, and 24 by 36. They're just
Right.
standard.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I was thinking the size marker, that kiosk that's at the pool, municipal pool right now, that size marker for each for Tiger Dowdell as well as Nick Rice. So can I make a motion?
Well, I have one other question.
Okay.
And I have a question too.
Okay, do we have a timeline on, if we send it back and say, please do make the marker larger, do we have a timeline on when we would see it again?
well, I think you would have to allow for time to get that working group back together, which has been a challenge. But the last couple times it's been better. And for them to, if they're going to add more text, it's going to take them longer to come to consensus on what that text is, just how far the text can go, how it can be fair and equitable to all of the parties that are involved. So it may take a few meetings for them to work that out. But as you saw in the presentation, this has been going on for 4 years now.
Yes.
So hopefully we would be able to get them together and get this back to you by the end of the summer.
Okay, I hate to drag it out anymore, but it doesn't seem right to approve it today with the statements from last meeting and, all right, go ahead, you had a question.
Well, I wondered, are we working on a system of markers to guide us in the future for, in this instance, it's this type, in this instance, it's, so in the future, we will have more of a system of markers instead of each time figuring out what we want?
We actually have a working marker subcommittee that hopefully is going to meet later this month. We're working on that date right now. One of the members of the committee has a rubric proposed that they're going to look at, and then also some information from staff on different types of markers. One of the things you noticed in these two and Steve with the Watkins actually did the design for those markers was to put that banner across the top so that we can kind of continue that forward with other markers, so there's some cohesive style involved. But they are a working group. They haven't gotten to that point yet, but hopefully they'll be moving along, because I know there's some other marker requests coming up that will need that rubric to kind of understand where it falls.
Well, and I think I might be even another different point of view, in that I think that the wording that's there here now is good, because you can sense the work that went into it, and how it's worded. And I'm comfortable with having the wording "killed by Lawrence police." And I actually would be of a mind that it not have a QR code, that it just have where it's directing people to the museum and perhaps the library, and that be the markers, because if, I don't know, I think that actually, how simple it is and what it says is very meaningful and very much taking into consideration that this is traumatic and complicated. And it reminds me of where you see just like a simple cross beside the road, and you know something happened there, and you can go find out about it. And so the QR code I'm uncomfortable with, because that connects to a website, and who knows what's going to happen with that in the future. And the Watkins Museum might, I don't know, it just is, you're tying it to something that's ephemeral, that usually a marker is that it gives you the essential information right there, and then if you're intrigued, you know to go find out more. And tying it to a website just seems like there's no way to consistently, over time, keep up with it, monitor it, and all of that. So that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, and I agree with you on the QR code. I think technology changes too swiftly, and we don't know what's going to be around 50 years from now in terms of tech and whatnot. If it's going to go by the way of cassettes and 8-tracks. I agree that I think we need larger markers, and at least the size of one of the one of the markers at Grover Barn, or the municipal pool, in terms of that size, with the 2 stands and big enough size, and to have more context, to have enough, not just context, but have enough explanation to fill that marker, along with the photographs of the 2 men, so that people don't have to run to the museum or run to a QR code to find out details. Yes, indeed, people could be incredibly intrigued and want to know more details about what the heck was going on in the summer of 1970, and they would know to go to Watkins or Spencer, what have you. And I agree that it's kind of hard to, I think obviously in terms of the content for Watkins and for Spencer, we ought to include Nick Rice's, essay, I guess you'd call it, that he put in this packet, as well as some other things. I'm not so sure. I'm a little hesitant about interviews of current police who happen to remember, because I think memories are foggy, and I'm not so sure I would want that particular content included, but that's a content question separate from the markers. Again, I think the markers need to be bigger, with more information that tells you exactly, here's what happened. The 2 men were killed by police. They were both shot in the back of the head. I think that's pretty important information. But again, I would leave it up to the families especially the Dowdell family, I would want them to put on their marker what they want so that the markers don't have to be identical. You know, the Dowdell and Rice don't have to be identical, don't have to have identical wordings necessarily, okay? That Dowdell has a specific wording based on what his family wants on the marker, and same with Nick Rice, based on what Chris wants. And that would be my motion, but I didn't make a motion because I'm still waiting.
I still see some
Yeah, I'm not,
questions.
I'll just, and then this will be my last comment. Sad as part of my indie and independent loving self is, I don't think QR codes or websites are going away. And I do think the marker should be expanded. I think of this, my reasons for that are not everyone does have cell phones. I hope that not all children under 18 have cell phones. I know that might not be the case, but I think you need a little bit more context. Also aware that people of different financial backgrounds or other reasons might or might not have the ability to read a QR code. And I think, and this is a judgment call, but the two very well-crafted sentences here aren't quite enough. But having read all of the packet background, I will say I do think a website is in order because I've read whatever 50 pages and it's still not enough. And I still don't know what happened and won't pretend that as an HRC member to be an authority on that, where I do think linking to a website, whether it's a QR code or a static link that redirects from the city website to the Watkins, I also trust the Watkins. I think these are complex enough issues that it would be a disservice, given the technology and the ability of websites do exist, to not link to them, even if markers from 50 years ago didn't have websites, because, you know, the web was twinkle in Al Gore's eye.
Right.
But I think something like that should be provided, some expansion. I know that's vague all the way around, but I think that's what the people deserve. End of soapbox.
Thank you. Commissioner Haynes, do you have any comments for us or guidance?
Yeah, I'll address what KT said first. I don't think that there needs to be any kind of effort to motivate Steve at the Watkins or me to make sure that presumably all my other tasks are set aside and I focus on this. Like, if we have this as a mission, excuse me, to get this done, it will get done. It'll take several months just because we have so many other things happening, and this project is quite complicated. I agree with just about everything people have said. I've been going along with, yeah, let's have a QR code because that seemed to be the consensus. If the consensus is to not have a QR code, I'm perfectly fine with that too. Personally, I'm not even going to demand that the Watkins be mentioned. It's nice to be mentioned as a source of information for this. But of course, I support the idea that, the families of the victims probably deserve the most, or definitely deserve the most say-so in it. I believe I go with option 2, if I'm remembering correctly, the options that Lynn laid out for us. We send it back to the committee, of which I'm a member, to rewrite it and expand upon it. Option 4, I think, was to wait until everyone gets a chance to see the proposed website or web page. That's going to take a pretty long time, so I don't know if we want to do that. But personally, yeah, I would go with option 2, and I would say I think it's a great idea to try and approach the Spencer Library and try to bring them on board with as a co-project, or at least letting the public know that they have resources related to this as well. So I don't know how easy that would be, because I know, KU has its own red tape and that the staff have to deal with. But yeah, Lynn, if you need any help with that, then I'll be happy to help with that.
Okay, I think I'm ready to summarize a motion, if that is all right.
I was looking at the number 3 that Lynn had up there, which I think was, I would move to send the markers back to the working group to consider much larger markers. For example, 24 inches by 30-something, 36, whatever you mentioned, Jay, with additional text to be decided by the group and for the families to decide the respective text for their loved ones.
If I could just interject, if that was option 3, then that's what I meant to be in favor of.
And to provide, basically to provide as much context as possible on the markers themselves, and then with the QR code.
I will second that. Any further discussion before we take a vote? Okay. Commissioner Haynes?
Commissioner Haynes, aye.
Commissioner Johnson?
Commissioner Johnson, aye.
Commissioner Klein?
Commissioner Klein, aye.
Commissioner Hawley?
Commissioner Hawley, aye.
And Chair Coleman is an aye. The motion passes. Thank you. Moving on to item D3. HRC 24-1006.
This is a public hearing item for the public hearing for landmark nomination for 739 Connecticut Street, the Stephen Fox House. And I love these, so I'll try not to get too excited and wave my arms around a lot. But
Me too, Lynn.
this is a great property. This is showing the property location. The little dot here shows the subject property. And you'll notice that it's already included in a context area for a listed property that was also part of this thematic context. And I will tell you, I'm such a geek that when this came back up and I had to write the staff report, I went back and reread Dr. Domer's essay for East Lawrence, and every time I read it, I get more excited and want to go back through East Lawrence and nominate everything. So,
Me too.
but this one, I hope you have a chance to read the context. There's a lot of really good information in there, and I hope he, at one point, had wanted to pursue this as a book, and I hope that he will do that after he finishes his Conflict in Lawrence series. So hopefully that'll come to fruition, so we would have that for East Lawrence. This is the subject property, the primary elevation. If you'll notice some of the architectural detailing that was outlined in your staff report. As best we can tell, the property was constructed between 1915 and 1918. Staff goes with the 1918 date because usually when you have a period of time that a structure could be constructed during, you use the latest date to make sure you're not reflecting something that was actually there before. So that's why we went with the 1918 date. This is showing you that it is a 4/4 with the stair hall entry there of the area that was surveyed by the multiple property listing. This was 6.5% of this vernacular type was 6.5% of all the structures in that context area that the Living in East Lawrence thematic nomination looked at. I think I mentioned, well, maybe I didn't. It was Stephen Fox built the house. He was an African-American yard man with the UP Railroad, and so this is a really important part of not only our vernacular history of East Lawrence, but also of the history of East Lawrence as described in that melting pot portion of the essay that goes along with this nomination. Just quickly looking at the sides of the house. so you can get a feel of what it looks like. And this is the rear of the house. There has been a modern garage placed on the property that would be non-contributing to the property. It would be considered new construction and would not have the same review as the listed property for the primary structure. This is showing the context area of the of the proposed landmark with 8th Street at the bottom of your screen. And staff is recommending nomination for the Fox House under Criteria 1 and Criteria 4. Criteria 1 for its contribution to the broad patterns of the city's history based on that thematic nomination. When we listed, I can't remember how many properties, I think there were 10, with this thematic nomination before, trying to, because there is so much development pressure in East Lawrence, and a lot of it is on these simple vernacular forms that are so important to the history of East Lawrence. We tried to, we used Criteria 1 for the association with that thematic nomination for the growth and development of East Lawrence. That's why you see Criteria 1 here. And then, of course, Criteria 4 for its architecture, its vernacular architecture. There is a resolution that was included in your packet of information, Resolution 2024-02. Staff is recommending that you adopt that resolution after the conclusion of the public hearing and direct staff to forward the nomination with the resolution and the report required by Chapter 22 to the Lawrence City Commission. And with that, I'd be happy to stand for any questions you may have.
I don't have questions, I have comments. I should inform folks that Jennifer Barton contacted me ago, the property owner, and I did extensive research on Stephen Fox and his wife and their daughter, Emma. And I did also find a newspaper article that stated that Stephen Fox was starting to build the house in 1915. So, you know, maybe he finished it in 1918, I don't know. The newspapers didn't say when he finished it, but he certainly began in 1915. I would argue, I think he's important enough, he and his family are important enough to add that criterion to the register. And again, Jennifer has all the, I gave Jennifer gobs of stuff, all the census records, and they used to live in North Lawrence, and then they came to South Lawrence, and that's when he purchased the lot and built the house on Connecticut. And I think they're a pretty wonderful family, like so many other folks. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you. Is the applicant present? Do you have any more questions?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I am present.
Would you like to say anything? You don't have to. But.
Oh, I just appreciate the property being considered and all the work that the commission has put in to researching and presenting. I learned a lot in the process, and I'm very proud of the property and hope that it's accepted.
Thank you. Is there any public comment?
Hello again, Commissioners. My name is K.T. Walsh, Vice President of the East Lawrence Neighborhood Association, and we wholeheartedly support this nomination. So many of the working class homes we're losing, so many of them built by people of color, we're losing them, so this is wonderful. And also, it's right behind me, and we're in the North Rhode Island National Historic District, so it, you know, it just increases honoring these people. So thank you very much. Please support it.
Thank you.
Hello, Commissioner. My name is Joe Giacalone. It's the first time ever doing this, so I apologize for any etiquette flaws that may happen during my presentation. I also support the nomination of this house simply because maintaining historic housing, historic entities within inside any community is wonderful. My concern is, and I think it's a moot point because I've been told that based on the graphic that our house is already included in a historic district, so this is probably moot. But we own 732 Connecticut and the 732B Connecticut, which is a secondary apartment that's behind there. My concern always with historic listings for non-historic establishments is us being mitigated to what is done to those properties outside of what is generally code current versus code prior. So my concern is with our house being a part of that designation and having rulings against that for a non-historic context for a house that might want updates and the like done to it for my own accord and for what our family's accord is to that property. Could it be outside of the historic context of that specific property? Again, I wholeheartedly support Jennifer's request for this. I think it's wonderful. I think the historic background of the property should be noted, especially for what Lawrence has to offer and what we are indeed losing. But my concern, as always, is being mitigated to a specific context for our own property. And if I want to do anything outside of that context, being relegated to a context we don't necessarily want to stay in. So I'm mixed, I guess, in my approval. Yeah, that's all I had to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any public comment from the Zoom participants?
No one online.
Okay. Discussion? Anyone? Looks like a very well-researched nomination, and I appreciated how you included the multiple nomination document. It was interesting to see. Thank you. I am always in favor of nominating historic properties to the register. And I'll make a motion that we approve the nomination. But I think, do I also need to make a motion for?
You can, it would be appropriate just to adopt resolution, Historic Resources Commission Resolution 2024-02. And I'm not seeing that in your packet. Hold on.
Right. Yeah, Resolution 2024-02 would be the motion. But may I also, well, we can vote on that, but I would also like to argue for the criterion of a significant person. Or
So
should that be a separate?
Commissioner Klein, the reason that we don't have that is because it takes a good deal of research and material, other than just being here and having built the house and is
Which I
usually-
did, that's what I'm saying, it exists.
Okay, okay.
I mean, I could write a narrative on Stephen and his family if you like, and still have cited sources and so forth, like we do for other nominations.
If you want to, you could defer the item and reconsider that so that the rest of the commission has the ability to look at that information and the public.
Well, I wouldn't want to hold up the nomination.
Yeah, I wouldn't either.
Yeah, I don't want to hold up the nomination. I'm simply, requesting to add the history of this person, of Stephen Fox.
Which would be an amendment? How do you add information to a local register nomination? Is it?
Well, it hasn't been, you haven't passed the resolution, so it's still in the nomination stage. Staff's concern would be that that wasn't included in the packet material, so the other commissioners haven't had the opportunity to evaluate that information, and the public hasn't had the opportunity to evaluate that information. So if you want to add that criteria, staff would recommend that you defer this item until next month.
I really don't want to defer the project,
Okay.
but I also want to acknowledge Stephen Fox. Jennifer, you know what I'd like would be really cool? Is to
Sure, and I don't mind deferring it, and I agree that I really want him to be recognized as an individual.
Because I think what would be neat is to have just a little brass plaque on the front, next to the front door of your house that says "Built by Stephen Fox."
I would love that, and that was kind of something I had wanted to do.
Yeah.
Do that outside of the
Yeah.
nomination.
And you can do that outside of this, of the nomination, I guess, is what we're saying. I just think it would be grand to have Stephen recognized with his family.
I agree. I wish I could find a picture of Mr. Fox. I
Well,
haven't
that
been able
too,
to find
yeah,
one yet.
exactly, because we don't have a photograph of him. And all I have is all the information. I forget how many pages I gave you. Was it 10 or 15 pages?
Oh, gosh, it was a lot of material. I never could have
I
found all
gave you
that on
everything
my
I
own.
wanted to know.
And I thought that I submitted it when I
I
sent
did
everything in the
receive some of that
folder, but-
information, and I know there wasn't enough there for staff to support criteria 2 as well. But we can certainly go back and look at that and discuss it and follow up on some of that
That's
information.
been one of my arguments all along, and the argument that we're making about this particular house is that it is a vernacular house that tends to get overlooked in the East Lawrence neighborhood, and that these houses need to be nominated. And my argument going along with that is that the human beings, the people who lived in those houses, who built those houses, also need to be acknowledged, and no, they were not the grandiose, forefathers of Lawrence. They were, hardworking class citizens of Lawrence, who, had lives and worked very hard for what they earned. So I'm happy with just for now of
Well,
passing the resolution on the
one
criteria.
possible solution might be, right now, we're working on our website. It's one of the reasons I mentioned when we were talking about grants last month, that staff is working on, that will have a link to the nomination. And one of the things that we could do would be to add all of that additional information with the link for that property. That's an option that would, so this could move forward and we could just add that to the record.
It'd be nice.
great solution.
It'd be nice. And then Jennifer will have a little bronze plaque, built by Stephen Fox, 1915, whatever. Yay, Jennifer, go.
All right, so our motion should include we're making a motion to hold the public hearing? I don't understand.
You need to close the public hearing. You'd need a motion, a second, and a vote to close the public hearing. Then you would need a motion to adopt resolution 2024-02, recommending approval under criterion and 1, and I'm losing my place, 4, and forwarding to the city commission with the recommendation for adoption.
Okay, well, first motion, I move that we close the public hearing.
Seconded.
We'll take a vote. Commissioner Haynes,
Commissioner Haynes, aye.
Commissioner Johnson,
Commissioner Johnson, aye.
Commissioner Klein,
Commissioner Klein, aye?
Commissioner Hawley,
Commissioner Hawley, aye.
and Chair Coleman is an aye. So the public hearing is now closed. And next, we need a motion to adopt Historic Resources Commission Resolution 2024-02.
So move.
Wonderful. We'll take a vote. Commissioner Haynes,
Haynes, aye.
Commissioner Johnson,
Commissioner Johnson, aye.
Commissioner Klein,
Commissioner Klein, aye?
Commissioner Hawley,
Commissioner Hawley's pausing, which number? Which resolution number? I'm just-
It's 2024-02. It's on your main agenda. It's that right there. It's called a resolution, which is for the Lawrence nomination.
It's a different number.
It's a
in the
different
staff
number than in
report,
the
yes.
staff report.
Yeah.
Commissioner Hawley, aye.
okay, thank you. And Chair Coleman is an aye. All right, moving along to public hearing item D3. No,
Commissioner Coleman, or Chair Coleman, we need to reopen the public meeting, correct?
Oh, no, that was just a public hearing item. You had to open and close for the landmark, but your public meeting for the Historic Resources
was-
Commission is still ongoing.
okay, now item 3, HRC 241006.
Bless you.
This is a demolition and new construction project request for 916 Tennessee Street. This was at your meeting last month and was deferred to the Architectural Review Committee for the applicant to work with the ARC on some design alternatives that would help the project better meet the Oread neighborhood design guidelines. Because the property is located in District 5 of the Oread Neighborhood Design Overlay District. It's also located in the context area of the Benedict House at 923 Tennessee Street and the Charles and Adeline Duncan House at 933 Tennessee Street. We'll just quickly go through the information. This is the property location here in the green sign. If you recall last month, I told you this is a little bit of a unique situation in that the National Register nomination is in red, and for some reason, this portion of the block was not included in that National Register nomination. When the Oread Neighborhood Design Guidelines were established, the boundaries for those guidelines and designating districts, these houses were included in the Oread Historic District part of the overlay district. So it's a little bit unique in that it is in that district, but it's not listed in the National Register. And then the blue is the commercial zone. This is the existing structure, the primary facade. And just quickly looking at some of the structure because it is a demolition request, showing the foundation failure. And I will tell you that staff was able to go inside, but was not able to get into the basement because the north foundation wall has collapsed and it blocks the entry down into the basement. A couple of the interior photos showing you the condition of the interior of the structure. This is a rendering that is the result of the meeting with the Architectural Review Committee. One of the main changes to the project was that the structure now has eaves, and it really made a big difference in blending the structure in with the context of the Oread neighborhood. So this would be the primary elevation. It is a duplex. There's one door here, but the other door is on the side here so that it looks more like a single-family home. And just quickly walking around to show the difference. There are only two materials now. The foundation is clad or will be clad, and then you have the lap siding as your primary material. A porch was another part of the discussion, and that's been addressed. And then the rear of the facade of the structure. Staff is of the opinion that the changes that the applicant made after the Architectural Review Committee make the project meet the purpose of the intent of the Oread Neighborhood Design Guidelines, and is proposing that you approve the project for the certificate of approval and also for the Oread Neighborhood Design Guidelines. And I'd be happy to stand for any questions you may have. And this would also be the appropriate time for ARC members to add any information that they would have.
Because that's what I wanted to ask, is what changes were made with the applicant by the ARC.
It was the eaves and so the original submittal, the wall went straight up and then the roof sloped. there was no overhang in the original design. And so we talked about the overhang, the size of the eave being an important character defining feature of the neighborhood that we would like to see applied to this new building. It is more of its time, the design is not historic in replication, and we didn't want it to be, I think.
Okay.
I think the porch posts changed.
Yes.
And the exposed concrete was switched to a stone.
On the foundation, yes.
On the foundation.
Yes, and we felt like those changes were appropriate and would reinforce the neighborhood and not damage or destroy the
Yeah.
context.
I'll come in. I thought it was a very productive meeting, and, there's the normal back and forth, but ultimately, every item that was brought up, either in staff report or by ARC members, was addressed by the applicant in the revised drawings.
Yes. Is the applicant present and wishing to say some words?
I can say I'm here. I'm Sarah Koth with CT Design, and we're happy to accommodate the changes and happy to have it approved. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, is there any public comment on this item? Nothing in the room and anything online?
No one online.
Okay.
I would move to issue a certificate of approval for the proposed project.
I second. Any discussion? No?
I'd just like to point out there will be a second motion for the Oread guidelines, but that's a separate motion.
Yes, so this first motion is for the certificate of approval. We'll take a roll call vote. Commissioner Haynes?
Commissioner Haynes, aye.
Commissioner Johnson?
Commissioner Johnson, aye.
Commissioner Klein?
Commissioner Klein, aye.
Commissioner Hawley?
Commissioner Hawley, aye.
And Chair Coleman is an aye.
I will move that we find the proposed project meets the development and design standards of the Oread Neighborhood Design Guidelines for the Oread Neighborhood Design Overlay District.
I'll second that. Commissioner Hawley?
Thank you. We'll take a roll call vote. Commissioner Haynes?
Commissioner Haynes, aye.
Commissioner Johnson?
Commissioner Johnson, aye.
Commissioner Klein?
Commissioner Klein, aye.
Commissioner Hawley?
Commissioner Hawley, aye.
Chair Coleman is an aye. Motion passes. Thank you and good luck. Okay, moving on. Oh, I lost my bookmarks. To item D4, HRC 24-1009.
So as excited as I was about the landmark, this is when I get really sad. So this is a demolition request for 1510 Wedgewood Drive. It's located in the context area of Oak Hill Cemetery. This particular property has been working with the city, as you saw the information in your packet, for some time because it has been in such disrepair. There is a demolition permit submitted by the City of Lawrence on behalf of, by the City of Lawrence due to the structure's current stage of deterioration. It is no longer safe. They have declared the structure unsafe and dangerous, and they are pursuing demolition as the city The property owner, we had this before the Historic Resources Commission once before, that's in your packet, and the commission approved the demolition. After that meeting, the property owner met with the city and decided that they would pursue rehabilitation and applied for a building permit. That building permit was never completed. The inspections were never completed to complete the project. So the city is now pursuing demolition again. Because we have a new Chapter 22, and it is a new demolition request. It's before you this evening for your review. There is no replacement structure as required by Chapter 22 because, again, this is an action that the city is proposing based on the unsafe and dangerous nature of the property. This is Oak Hill Cemetery, and the blue line is the context area. 1510 Wedgewood is right here on the edge of that 250-foot context area. This is what the house looked like. I believe this is from 2017, I want to say. I would have to go back and check. But this was what the house looked like before any of the renovations started. This is what the house looks like now. You can see all the exterior sheathing has been removed. The window sizes had changed, but they've been boarded over. Here's another view taken to show what the existing structure looks like now. There were pictures in your packet that are current photos. If you've linked to the previous HRC meeting, you saw the pictures of the interior of the structure from the last time this went through the demolition process with the HRC. We have the code enforcement supervisor is online to answer any questions that you may have or to provide additional information. But overall, staff is asking you to find that the structure located at 1510 Wedgewood Drive does not contribute to the context area of Oak Hill Cemetery due to its current state of deterioration. And the designation by the city code's compliance staff that the structure is unsafe and dangerous, and issue the certificate of approval for the proposed project to remove the structure without a replacement structure. And with that, I'd be happy to stand for any questions. And as I mentioned, Tranny Westcott, our code enforcement supervisor, is also online.
Thank you. Is the applicant present? Would you like?
No, I'm not the applicant.
Or the applicant's designee? No?
Well, the applicant
applicant
is the city of Lawrence, so it would be, I mean, I don't know. Trini, did you want to add anything?
Just that, again, this has been before you in the past with the certificate of appropriateness, and the condition has only continued to worsen since then. And the property owner, Mr. Lehman, has had multiple opportunities with building permits issued to repair or rehab the structure to no avail. So we believe that it is unsafe and dangerous and needs to come down.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any questions before we take public comment for Lynn or city staff? No? Okay. Then we're ready for public comment. Should there be any?
Hi, my name is William Lehman, and I'm the property owner. There's a couple things that just as an aside, and I know they don't really, because we discussed it before, the Historic Commission, you don't really have anything to do with that, but it still is semi-relevant, and that is inspections were requested and not done by the city. They were canceled by the city. According to the city, it was extended to like September, and these were done like in February, somewhere around in there with Timberley French. And so, but they were canceled. So another thing is, if you read through the documentation in there, it is contradictory, where it says no work was done, and then they say work was done. This was done, this was done, this was done, and then they say no work was done. And so that's what I'm saying. When they say no work was done, they literally contradict themselves on that. Okay, so that's the first part. Although, like I said, it doesn't directly, it doesn't necessarily anything you could say or do as far as to make an adjustment or a correction on that. The other thing is, the ordinance 10016, and then as it was codified into chapter 22, very specifically says compatible replacement. Not only does it say compatible replacement, it says only with a compatible replacement. And it mentions compatible replacement, page 1, twice, page 4, page 6, and page 7. And like I said, it does say only a compatible replacement. And so the city, and this is where I kind of have a problem with the city and the code enforcement. They want everyone to follow the code except them. Now, it very clearly says only compatible replacement. And that's in the ordinance. I didn't write the ordinance. It's the city's ordinance. And so they are not following it. Not only are they not following, they specifically just told you they are not going to follow it. And so for that alone, you should not approve it. And so there is I mean, they can resolve that, but they chose not to. They specifically chose not to. And then, like I said, that's one of them there where I have an issue dealing with them. And like I said, Brian Jimenez, going back and forth with him, a little personal thing. But at this point, I'm done with that. As somebody told me, it's like, just let it go. The city doesn't care. That person can do whatever they want, and they don't do anything. Even when you show them, as in this example here, they don't follow the rules or ordinances. Okay, so that's the first example, or first item. Let's see. The next is the application for the demolition permit is not valid. I don't know if you have a copy of in the packet. I don't remember looking through it whether or not there was one. But the demolition permit, it has the applicant's signature, and in the code, it talks about, again, it says that the name, address, and telephone number of the current record owner and any contract purchaser of the building structure has to be listed in the building permit. It is not. And so again, people think that I'm joking around when I say that he does these things. Mr. Jimenez put himself as the applicant's signature, and then under property owner or person, firm, or corporation responsible for the building, he again put the city. That is not correct. That is not how you would do it if you were going to fill it out for the city. He should have filled it out and say that he was the one that is applying for it for the city. So it was an intentional, it was done with intention so that I was not listed on it, so that as a public notice and everything and stuff like that, I have there's like software that you can get that will monitor and look for your name in public, for like legal documents or legal publications and stuff. And so this was specifically done. And so because of the way it was done, it was so that I wouldn't get a notification. Now, I do credit Zellner that emailed me to let me know about this. And so, but yeah, so the permit is not valid the way it's filled out. It's just on its face, it's not valid. So that's the second item. Let's see, make sure I covered it. Okay, and then, not that it matters, you could look up, but the county shows me as the owner, so it's pretty straightforward on that point. And then, as published, I went by the Journal World, and again, the permit application that was published says that he is the applicant. It also says he is the property owner of the property. Sorry, where's that? Okay. And like I said, and I already said it, but I'll just say it again, I guess in closing, that ordinance 22, or yeah, I guess chapter 22, or whatever it's called, not ordinance, code, in the code, chapter 22 says, only when a comparable replacement structure is proposed. Now, part of that also means is, I heard you guys talking earlier about other structures. Chapter 22 and the ordinance are designed to keep housing in place that goes with the neighborhood. And so now, I'm not going to give you reasons because when I spoke before, you said it doesn't matter, but there are reasons of why things weren't done in a more timely manner. Although, as I said, I did submit inspection requests. And so, but as far as getting going on it, it's just different little things and stuff. And as I say, when I talk to my friends and stuff, every time I get it run where I could work on it, something would happen, whether it was family, injury, and just, for example, like last year, I tore my quad tendon and then couldn't do anything. Now the other is they say, oh, you can get a contractor. I tried. And so I went through the list of contractors and the people that called me back. It was roughly 10 people, made appointments. One person showed up, no, 2 people showed up. The one person said, I don't do houses like this. He goes, I do shake, like cedar shake and everything. And he said, but, you know, good luck. And then the other guy showed up. We did have an arrangement and a deal. And then he called the city, or vice versa. That I'm a little, can't remember exactly. No, he did call the city. And after that, he disappeared. Wouldn't answer calls, texts, anything. So again, I went through the list. There's a listing on the city where you have all the different contractors who are licensed and everything. And so going through and call them, of the ones that return calls and talk to them, they want to know the background of what's going on. I explain it to them. And again, not everyone, but enough of them told me to be concerning, no, I don't want to do that. Because I don't want to get that guy annoyed, because if that guy gets annoyed, he won't let it go. And so I already have a hard enough time getting permits as it is, with the process. And there's not really anything hard, but that's, to them, it's hard. And so they said, I don't want to get on his bad side. And so, I mean, that's basically where it's at. So, like I said, the main things that if you want to hang your hat on it, it says only when a comparable replacement structure is proposed. And so just on that alone, you can't approve it because they did not propose one. And the other is, oh, that's the other thing. If the city is not happy, there is the option of a civil action in 22-1302 where they can go to court and deal with it that way. He doesn't want to. We've gone to court before, and in a court of law, I beat him, which again, I didn't realize at the time that it was going to, you know, that embarrassment was going to last for years. But they could go to court. They don't want to do that because if you go to court, it has to be dealt with legally, and they have to have their ducks in a row, and they don't. So instead, what is being done now is the same thing, is using the administrative process where he can control it and get, you know, present how he wants it. Everything's presented, you know, in his favor and everything. So that's what's going on. The other thing is, I mean, I have them if you want them to look at them. I didn't see until today that they had to be submitted ahead of time for the, like, I think 10 o'clock or something like that. But I have receipts of things that I had bought just recently of like $2,200 of sheathing and siding. And so that was one of the things that one of the builders, when I started calling again, maybe a couple months ago, where he said, you don't really need a permit for that, you can just do it. And so he said, that's where you effed up, where you're submitting a permit for something you don't really need. And so once you do that, then, so. But yeah, like I said, if Mr. Jimenez has a problem with it, there's an option that he can go to court and deal with it. But like I said, right now, I don't see any way that you can legally approve it because there is no proposed replacement.
Is there any other public comment?
None online.
Okay. So I'm trying to figure out what we need to discuss. I think that finding that the property does not contribute to the context area due to its current state of deterioration, isn't that contrary to the the minimum maintenance requirement? I thought that we had written in here that it refers back to the city's adopted property maintenance code. And it doesn't list out what the maintenance requirements are, but any property within the context area of a listed property would be subject to that.
That's correct.
But what I'm unclear on is the process. I guess it sounds like the process when that maintenance is not adhered to, that the city makes the determination that it is unsafe, and that is why they are the applicant?
That's correct.
Okay.
I mean, my reading of all the materials submitted here basically show repeated permits for building, and then and they all expired because no activity happened for whatever reasons. I think there's a fourth building permit was submitted May of 2023. And again, that's where it said the suggestion was to get a contractor, and as you explained, Mr. Lehman, you could not get a contractor. But that was the fourth, after the fourth building permit.
Well, I have a question for code enforcement. It seems like that the crux of the issue is that this really is beyond repair.
We do believe that it's an unsafe and dangerous property. We've been dealing with it for a number of years. Back in 2020, in 2021, the commission adopted a resolution for us to demolish the property. And Mr. Lehman again applied for a permit and did not conduct any work. The permit expired. In May of 2023, that permit expired. He applied, and was denied that owner-occupant permit based on the history with the other permits, and he appealed that to the Building Code Board of Appeals, and they upheld our decision to make Mr. Lehman get a contractor because of his inability to complete the work as necessary and timely.
I note that electricity has been off since 2019. City terminated the water service April 2018, and Black Hills gas service is still currently active, or was currently active, I guess, at the time, or is. Yeah, this has a long story dating back to 2017.
Again, that's not accurate for those dates and times or what occurred as far as the utilities, so.
Are we ready for a motion?
Sure.
I make a motion to find that the structure located at 1510 Wedgewood Drive does not contribute to the context area of Oak Hill Cemetery due to its current state of deterioration and designation by the city's code compliance staff that the structure is unsafe and dangerous, and issue the certificate of approval for the proposed project.
I will second. Any discussion?
I would just like to just confirm on process, Lynn, from my reading of report, if the applicant wanted, this is, I mean, we're letting this move forward, but the applicant still has a opportunity to present a plan before the city commission to improve the structure and make it a habitable for human consumption, correct? I mean, it's this.
That's correct.
I mean, the
That's correct. He
materials
can-
are on order, either through hiring a contractor or demonstrating through action and ability to bring it up. The path's still open, correct?
I will defer to Trini. Your approval does not guarantee that the structure will be demolished. There's still that opportunity from the historic resources standpoint for them at any time to rehabilitate the structure, and staff would likely approve that administratively. But Trini, I'll let you answer the question whether or not Mr. Lehman can go ahead and move forward with the permits and rehabilitate the structure before final action is taken by City Commission.
The City Commission has already adopted a resolution for demolition. That was adopted, let me see.
Yeah, it's in here.
Yeah. June 1st, 2021, and I have consulted with Randy Larkin, city attorney, senior city attorney, that resolution does still stand. So what is we're coming before you tonight to get this approval to move forward with the demolition.
Thank you for that clarification.
You're welcome.
Any other discussion or clarification questions? Okay. Then we'll take a roll call vote. Commissioner Haynes,
Commissioner Haynes, aye.
Commissioner Johnson,
Commissioner Johnson, aye.
Commissioner Klein,
Commissioner Klein, aye.
Commissioner Hawley,
Commissioner Hawley, aye.
and Chair Coleman is an aye. Okay. Back to the agenda. I think we have one miscellaneous.
Just wanted to remind you that your training and planning session is Friday, May 31st from 12 to 4. I'm working at having lunch there for you, so you don't have to bring your brown bag. But if there's a snag between now and then, I'll call you and say, you're getting a peanut butter sandwich made by Lynn. If you can't make the training, we are recording it. And then also, if there are other questions that you have that come out from watching the recording, we can always set up a one-on-one with the State Historic Preservation Office staff or with me to get those questions answered, so everybody has the opportunity to attend the training.
12 to 4, you said?
It's from 12 to 4 in the planning office.
And I just wanted to clarify, this is not the working plan.
No, it is the working plan. It is the training and on the work plan.
So are we getting a work plan to talk about? Are we getting an agenda of the work plan of here's what we're going to talk about?
We will get an agenda to you before the meeting, yes.
Okay.
And I unfortunately won't be there. I'll be out of town, but I will look forward to the recording.
Great.
And then the only other thing was, I don't know if you've been following the city commission, but the city commission recently adopted some resolutions as far as boards and commissions and trainings. And so there will be some changes coming our way, mainly with the order of your agenda and how we do things, and also determination of commissioners and terms, and getting more training on public hearing process. So there'll be more to come as soon as I have direction from the city manager's office how we will be implementing that. I will let you know.
Okay. Thank you. We are adjourned.
Thank you.